All right, folks, back at it once again. Josh here along with Boz, aka Raid or Reed, Reyd, whatever you want to go by there. Boz, how's it going, buddy?
It's good. I actually, I decided to go back to Boz because so many people know me online as Boz, so it's kind of complicated having to explain.
All right,
So,
good stuff. That's
uh,
BOZ for those that didn't know. But another
yeah,
edition of Boxing Chit.
I'm fine. I just, I was like out last night, and then I also took part in this sort of quiz online, this online stream, and I was, up till like almost 5 in the morning.
Oh, wow.
But I got enough sleep anyway.
Yeah. That certainly happens. I was up a bit late as well. Just I was
Yeah,
watching the
of
boxing
course.
stuff, and then I actually caught that UFC fight there, at least the tail end of it, with the style bender or whatever. But
Right.
certainly, yeah, I know it can be a challenge there where you're at because the timing gets thrown completely off, and you have to be up in the wee
Yeah,
hours of the morning to catch all the
yeah.
stuff that's going on.
That really is no good. I mean, maybe when I was younger, I could have done that, but now, it's difficult, not to sleep like until 8 in the morning or something.
Yeah. Certainly. So cool. Yeah, definitely. We appreciate everyone who is tuning in. I wasn't able to stream in the actual 86 Boxing Facebook group because I was banned from streaming for 7 days. I guess because I showed this live fight that was going on featuring Tierra Brown. Shout out to Tierra Brown.
Oh
Picked up a
yeah.
victory over in the Dominican Republic. So it's all good. We're still coming at you
Mm,
live. So it's a good thing regardless. But we're here to
yeah.
talk about the boxing action that took place. And we can jump right into it with the ESPN card, which featured Janibek Alimkhanuly. I think I'm getting better at saying that name
Yeah.
now. So he was taking on Denzel Bentley of England. Now Janibek, he's actually from Kazakhstan, nicknamed Kazakh Style. Of course, he's highly touted. He was a great amateur, much like a lot of the Eastern Europeans who actually jump into the sport. A lot of
Yeah.
them come in very much seasoned. They're more mature, and he's one of those fighters. He has a lot of fanfare behind him. Top rank is firmly behind him, and he's viewed as sort of a boogeyman of the division, or at least
Yeah.
he was viewed as sort of a boogeyman in the division, depending on how you saw the fight last night. But that being said, it ended up being a unanimous decision victory for Janibek. That unanimous decision, though, was not as lopsided as one may have thought going into the fight. I know that
Mm,
myself personally, I did think that he would probably get Denzel Bentley out of there at some point. But
yeah.
as
Me
I
too.
mentioned in the previous stream with Fight Night Scores, shout out to Fight Night Scores, which is a scoring gap. And I didn't happen to score this fight. It's a scoring website. Be sure to check it out, fight-score.com. But
Mm,
as I mentioned there in the stream that we were previously in, I think two things can be true. Denzel Bentley is better than probably what I and many thought, and Janibek Alimkhanuly is not yet that boogeyman or just demon of the division that had been heaped upon him thus far. And that's not to say that he won't develop into such, but I think that we have to pump the brakes a slight bit, even though this could be a one off in terms of his showing. But that being
mm.
said, what are your thoughts on what went down there, Boz?
Yeah, well, I didn't watch the whole fight, but I did watch the highlights, and it kind of looked like yeah. I mean, Alim Kanuli did kind of dominate, but in the last few rounds he did take some big shots too. So it looks like he's got some defensive issues, and yeah, I also kind of expected him to stop Bentley because Bentley has already been stopped and against Felix Cash, like who is that? Like nobody, like in 3 rounds, I believe. And then I thought, yeah, well, this is not gonna last, much longer. That surely. And then I see that he won by, like on points. I was like, what? oh no, I was really disappointed. Yeah, I was like, no, this guy ain't gonna do it, ain't gonna make it big, if he can't stop Bentley. And he's obviously a puncher. But yeah, I mean, he did land quite many really good clean shots, Alimkhanuly, and he took some as well, as I said. And yeah, it was a good fight, obviously, from what I saw anyway. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if he's going to get better. Maybe he hasn't had that many fights yet as a pro. I think he was like 14, or something.
Hmm.
16, I don't know. Not, he has less than 20 fights anyway. So, it's a learning curve. It's possible he may get a little better, but not much better, I think. So, we'll see anyway.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right. You're spot on there. Shout out to Random Acoustic Thoughts. Appreciate having you in here, buddy. If you want to come on and chat at any point, feel free. We can send you that link. You know what I'm saying? Always good to chat with Random
Mm.
Acoustic Thoughts. Check him out. We have been going through a series on the great Harry Wills, the Black Panther Harry Wills. We're up to part 4. There's going to be a part 5 at some point as we close out his career. So be sure to check that out. Random Acoustic Thoughts. You see it there on the screen if you're watching, and if you're hearing, just look it up on YouTube. Random Acoustic Thoughts. Great history discussions taking place there. And also a little bit of MMA action, especially on the Bellator and Ryzen side. But Boxing Chit, once again, and Random says drop the link. We can get you in here. We're gonna work that right now, Random. But yeah, certainly I'm with you there, Boz, as far as Alimkhanuly. He definitely had that fanfare. I think many people thought that he was going to be able to defeat Denzel Bentley in more impressive fashion. I give it to
Right.
Bentley. He has a bit more. He has more wrinkles to his game than probably what we thought. He didn't really do anything overly impressive, but I think he's a little bit more durable than
Yeah.
what may be thought, as well as he seemed to be pretty sure of himself offensively once he got into a groove, and
Yeah.
he knew what he could do. A lot of it was him throwing a bunch of straight punches behind his jab. He was throwing that straight right, and he found success. He would loop in some shots here and there, and it was
Mm.
really nothing overwhelming. And I think that it could be true, the notion that Janibek actually probably took him lightly, probably didn't prepare in the sense
Yeah.
that he may
It's
have thought that he
possible.
needed to. But
Mm.
also, hey, you have to give Denzel Bentley his credit, because he
Yeah.
came through on a stage in which, this was the biggest fight opportunity for him, at least in front of an American audience. And I will say that he probably left in a better place than what he started, because he is someone who I would like to see again, and I think he can give a lot of individuals some problems there
Mm.
in the division. And shout out to Bruce Gas Boxing and Jazz, Bruce Gas Boxing Jazz and more. Salute to him. Be sure to check out his page if you haven't yet. Go give him a follow. It's one of
Mm.
the most entertaining on boxing in general across all YouTube. Bruce Gas, thank you for coming in, my friend. We appreciate having you here as well. But yeah, so we were speaking on, this is another edition of Boxing Chat for those joining in. We were speaking on Janibek Alimkhanuly versus Denzel Bentley, which was a 12-round unanimous decision bout for, or unanimous decision win for Janibek.
Mm.
Now, Boz, taking that into account, Alimkhanuly, he's kind of in that top 10 of the 160-pound rankings. That being said, he doesn't yet really have a signature win that can make you say that, oh, he's the definitive best of the division. And there
Yeah.
are a lot of guys who are in or around there. What do you think about the prospects of what could be next for him?
Yeah, well, I will just add that his best names on his record are, were past their prime, like Nadam, for instance, and I believe Rob Bryant he fought also. Yeah. Anyway, so Well, I don't really. Of course, there's always guys like Mongia. You know, who can be he can be matched up against. That would be, of course, a very good fight, I think. And other than that, well, there are a few guys. I'm not sure really. Some of them might have in the meantime gone up to 168. I think
Yeah.
Suletsky, he's at 160 still, isn't he?
Yeah, he was actually supposed to fight Jamal Charlo this
Right.
year, and of course, Charlo got hurt, and that fight was scrapped, or it was thought to be postponed at least, but it looked like it's
Mm.
not happening. And of course, Selesky, he hasn't fought since then, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I mean that's a pity. He's a pretty skilled like technician and all that. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, he would
So I
actually
would
be a
like,
good name for both Mungia and Janibek, actually.
yeah, because has been a good test to everyone he's fought so far, and if not more than that, of course. But he fought Jamal Charles, didn't he? Yeah, or yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
that's
You
what
said
was gonna happen.
he's gonna, yeah, yeah.
But
That I remember.
he's been in with Daniel Jacobs.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's right. Yeah, yeah.
was he
So
in with
he's had a
Andre?
few impressive wins even before that. I know he stopped Hugo Centeno Jr. In
Oh yeah,
10 rounds, I think. So he doesn't have many knockouts, but he did stop him. And yeah, he's like 33 years old now. Hasn't had a fight this year yet. So yeah, maybe
yeah,
it's about time to have
yeah.
him.
He was in with Andre. Yeah, I thought so. So he lost the decision
Yeah,
to Andre. So his only losses are to Andre and Daniel Jacobs. But he does have some decent names in which he's gotten some wins over, including
yeah.
Gabriel
Rosado.
Rosario,
Yeah,
Jack Colkay. I think that's how you say his name. But he's a decent
yeah.
fighter as
Or
well.
yeah, something like that. Cool guy. Maybe, I don't know.
German.
Yeah, but he's from, I think, originally from Ecuador. In fact.
Yep, yep. You're right. You're right.
Mm. Hello, Jim. There is Jim.
Yeah.
Fight
So yeah,
night.
and then as you mentioned, Hugo Centeno Jr., who looked like he was going to be one of the top dogs there for a while.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Certainly.
Tuleski
He
is
was
certainly one of those
undefeated.
good names to have.
He was, yeah. He was undefeated when Suletsky beat him. He was 24 and all.
Oh
Mm.
yeah, yeah, that is correct. And really quick shout out to Fight Night Scores in the mix here. We actually just finished the live stream where we scored uh
Yep.
Aaron
Oh,
Pryor versus Alexis Arguello, the first fight, classic fight. It was great. So be sure to go check out that stream if you haven't subscribed to Fight Night Scores. In addition to such, it was not just myself, Fight Night Scores, but also Big Fish Vega. Shout out to Big Fish Vega. Appreciate you dropping in, buddy. Be sure to subscribe to Big Fish Vega. We were over scoring on Fight Night Scores YouTube, just as I mentioned, and of course you can score, follow along, and do it live yourself at fight-score.com. Definitely the most comprehensive way of scoring overall for the sport. So we're here again, another edition of Boxing Chit. I think we're up to 34, maybe 35, somewhere in the mix. We'll get that right. But that being said, we were talking about Janibek Alimkhanuly versus Denzel Bentley, and how it was a very good showing for Bentley as far as what expectations were placed on him, which really there weren't many. And he
no.
actually turned out to do a lot better than what many may have thought, myself included, Boz included. So that speaks volumes. And hey, he I think added his name to the mix. We talked about what could be next for Alimkhanuly, but I think Denzel Bentley, his name is there in the mix as well as one of the guys at 160 that we likely see in the
That's fact.
future who could be a name that pops up that is a challenge for someone who's looking for what may ultimately be a tough fight, and a guy who's been able to at least on this stage do what he needed to do to stand out and impress somewhat. So it was a loss for him against Alam Kanoli, but it wasn't the worst loss that one can take in a career, and I believe many thought it would be worse than what it actually turned out to be. So, shout out to Denzel Bentley in that regard. And Big Fish Vega says, interesting. Janibek's stock is lowered in a win, while Bentley is up in a loss. Yes, that is that is pretty interesting. You're right. What a strange sport we have, says Big Fish Vega. Yeah, that is a great point. I mean, just shows how things can change right there on a dime. Reminds me of how, though it's not as controversial. I think that we all are on the side of yes, Janibek won it, but certainly I think about when Jack Catterall, when he actually faced Josh Taylor, how his stock went up in a loss, which was a controversial loss. Some would say robbery, and Josh
Mm.
Taylor's stock went down. This was a guy who was top 10 pound for pound for many, and that one fight just kind of changed his outlook.
Yeah.
Totally. And I think that with Janibek, though not to that degree, this one fight did show that, of course, he is human. He is probably not the boogeyman of the division in the sense that we thought. And I think that they were trying to make a lot of parallels to that of Triple G, who was another Kazakh fighter who was on a tear. And I feel like Triple G, though, I mean, the way he went about it was uh, a bit different, and sort of that aura mystique behind him was different than that of Janibek as he's gone through this process. And in large part, I think some of what tied to that is when it related to Triple G, we also had, as he started to even peak in his rise, Canelo make that transition towards 160 pounds, and the two had sparred before, so they were familiar with each other to a certain degree. And we saw what Triple G was able to do with each opponent as he essentially stepped it up in competition, and that led for a great rivalry between Triple G and Canelo Alvarez. But as it relates to Janibek, he doesn't yet have a dance partner in sight that we think could even remotely turn into something to that degree. So
Mm.
it's going to be a very interesting, I would say,
Yeah.
next year for him in terms of who he fights next, what that ultimately boils down to as it relates to if it's going to help boost him in the public's eye a bit more, because he could certainly use that. And as I mentioned in
Mm.
the fight night score stream, I think if he were able to get like a Jaime Munguia and say he defeated Jaime Munguia, I think that would actually provide some benefit to him, and that would certainly increase his stock somewhat in terms of if he was able to defeat this Mexican fighter who does have a name to a certain degree, though is probably not at the height it should be given his earlier trajectory. But if you were able to get someone like that, or as Fight Night Scores had mentioned, didn't or if you were able to get Chris Eubank Jr. or someone like that, then yeah, that could be a boost to him. But whether that actually happens is, a big question at this point.
Mm. I don't think there's ever gonna be another Triple G. At least not from the same country. There's not such a great chance, maybe from some other similar part of the world. But
And and the boost with Triple G, I mean Triple G, that's what we know him as. We we do I guess Janibek is Janibek kind of. His name is
yeah,
tougher for us to say, but just having Triple G, I mean, that started to just kind of take over, and then he just
yeah,
became synonymous with that. You didn't
yeah. It
even, if you
shows.
said Triple G, then you automatically knew who was being
Mhm.
spoken of.
Yeah, I mean, very few people today, especially, are calling him Golovkin. It's mostly when they are being more technical, about it, like boxing analysts and stuff. But yeah, I mean, shows his great popularity everywhere, among boxing crowd. Yeah.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. And actually, we're gonna have a little detour here. Well, not necessarily a detour, but we're gonna have an addition. We got Random Acoustic Thoughts, who's dropped in as a guest on occasion, going to be jumping into the mix. We're going to bring him in here. Of course, if you don't know Random Acoustic Thoughts, he really focuses on the history of the sport. A lot of stuff done on the great Sam Langford, Sam McVeigh, Joe Jeanette, etc. Harry Wills. And there's a series we've been going through here recently, as a matter of fact, pertaining to
George
Harry Will.
Godfrey.
Harry
Yeah.
Wills. So that is intriguing in itself. He was a potential opponent of Jack Dempsey's, but certainly it's great to be able to get Random Acoustic Thoughts in the mix as well as we give this rundown of all the weekend's action. So how's it going, Random?
I'm good, man. How are you guys doing?
Hey, where's your picture? Where is the video?
All
Oh,
is
I look crazy. I work nights. I just woke up. I look even crazier than normal. I think the avatar's best.
good.
Plus, if you can see, I've got three of the all-time great fighters on there right now. I got Fedor Emelianenko, the man I consider the top MMA fighter of all time. Great Sam Langford, and on the right there is Ernesto Hoost, the great kickboxer, king of the golden age, at least in my mind, my tiny mind. So what happened this weekend? I'm completely out of the loop. I've been studying. I've been just reading up on wills for our series, Josh, and also my ongoing studies of Sam Langford in the sort of the earliest years of the 1900s. What happened this weekend was good stuff I should check out.
Oh yeah, so yeah, we were just speaking on Janibek Alimkhanuly, who is a Kazakh fighter who is highly regarded, and he was a top level amateur, very skilled fighter. He was on a high trajectory, and I guess you can say still is on a high trajectory. But he was headlining on ESPN last night against a fighter by the name of Bentley out of the UK, who was a name if you follow the sport beyond, of course, the domestic side. He was a name over in the UK. He's had some decent fights. He was expected to lose to Janibek, I would say. A lot of people probably thought that he was going to be blown out, but he actually made it a slightly tougher fight than what was thought when he actually entered into the contest. And it ended up being a unanimous decision victory for Janibek Alimkhanuly, the Kazakh fighter. But it wasn't without him having to really bite down and go through a slight bit of a diversity. One thing I did notice with Janibek, he had his mouth open a lot, so that could have spoke to the fact that he was probably feeling it as far as stamina. For a minute there, I was thinking maybe something was wrong with his jaw because you typically see that when someone's jaw is broken. But I think it may have more so just boiled down to his conditioning there at the tail end. But he was able to step it up in the 12th round and won that round definitively, landing a lot of good stuff on Denzel Bentley, who showed his medal as well. And as we were mentioning, Random, so in the fight, of course, Denzel Bentley, his stock rose in a loss. And as for Janibek Alimkhanuly, who was viewed as sort of the boogeyman of the division, while his stock uh, didn't necessarily fall per se, it certainly uh, changed the dynamic a bit as far as how he's viewed at this very moment. It certainly didn't help with the sort of mystique and hype that was pushed as far as him being sort of the boogeyman of the division or that guy who was just going to run through whomever he faced.
Oh, I see. So was he finish heavy in his career so far? 'Cause, sometimes a prospect will come up finishing everybody, and then when he gets that first decision, people are like, oh, he is human.
So he had some stoppages. He just had a good all around skill set, and he's just a tough fighter. And the finishes that he did have, they were fairly impressive. And he just looked like he was going to be a guy that it was going to take the very elite, the very top guys at the division. It was going to take someone like that to be able to give him the type of fight that would bring out the best of what he had to offer. And in a sense, I guess you can say that's still somewhat the case because I think there will probably still be some questions as to okay, how does he look if he's in there with Jamal Charlo, or if he's in there with a Demetrius Andrade who may still be competing around the division, or even a Jaime Munguia at 160 pounds. I think it just kind of added to that in a sense. How does he look at that elite level? That's a question that still lingers.
Right. We see that, Josh. I know you see it too in boxing history. We see guys, there are lots of win streaks, right? Over history, different ways to bring up fighters. Not everyone goes straight into the deep end. And nowadays, the management are so good at bringing up a fighter. It might be some years before you really see them go through the fire and show whether they can push through those extra barriers. So it's probably a really good thing for this young fighter to have to push through and test and like realize, okay, I really am the thing. 'Cause, the hype sometimes gets ahead of the prospects, like the actual proven ability, not the ability, but like what they've actually shown. So it can be a good thing. There's plenty of that in MMA, especially where fight IQ plays such an important part, because if you're being outstruck, you can turn the fight with a clever takedown or clinch knees, or like all the different varieties of martial arts that feed into MMA. There's lots of ways to lose, lots of unpredictability, and experience shows that fight IQ. It's rare for a young guy or someone who's new to the mixed rules to come in. In fact, in the UFC last night, they just got a new middleweight champion who's only had a handful, half a dozen, 6 or 7, something like that, MMA fights. He's a kickboxer who had already beaten the champion. Adesanya just lost, but he got spoilers. Too bad. But
yeah, just able to catch that.
Of course, you're doing the spoiler. This whole show is spoilers. What am I saying? Yeah. In MMA, there's a thing where they're so scared of spoilers, and it's like, just stay offline, you dorks. If you don't want the results, don't get on the internet. What the heck? But anyway, that's very cool. Well, I know nothing about today's scene practically, so I'm not going to stay on for very long. I got to go. I got some reading to do before I go to work. But I just want to come in and say, great show. I'll be listening. And just keep giving this good content. Josh, I think we have it tentatively planned for not this Saturday, but next Saturday to do the Langford versus Sam McVeigh, the two Sams, go through the 15 fights they have between them. But I got to go check all the sources to make sure it is 15, because there's dispute, like with the Will series, it's somewhere between 18 and 22 meetings. Because when you're going by newspapers, sometimes people get the date wrong, but sometimes these fighters really did fight just days apart. So there's always some dispute. I'm going to try and, for part 5 of the Wills episode, I'm going to try to have that narrowed down. Like, okay, so what is the controversy between how many fights they had? That'll be one aspect to what we do. But keep up the great work, fellas. I'm going to jump off. And thanks for all the content.
Cool. Yeah, we appreciate it. We appreciate it, Random. Certainly. Enjoy the rest of your day. And, of course, look forward to that Harry Wills series.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll schedule that soon. Thanks, fellas.
Peace.
Bye.
All right, there, Boz. I mean, this was certainly a fight that left a lot of questions, and it adds to the intrigue and to the discussion a good bit as we move forward. Fight Night Score says middleweight is kind of sparse for talent, but those top 5, 6 all facing one another makes for more interesting bouts, and the biggest barrier these days is actually getting the best facing one another. Yeah, that right there is very much true.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's why if I was the manager of Alimkhanuly, I wouldn't have really matched him up against someone like Munguia now, and we already thought, because it would be better to fight someone like Suletsky, because he's like, he's good, but he's not like, the best out there, So if he cannot beat him, then, he's no chance he's beating someone like Munguia, So
yeah. I mean, that would be interesting one, as we were mentioning, against Selesky. I do agree that if we could get some of these fights made, especially at the top level, then that would certainly help the matter. 168 or 160 pounds rather, in my opinion, is a lot like 135 pounds to a certain degree, where you have all this talent that is in the division or at least around the division. Yet none of the big matchups that would make for the most exciting and most intriguing fights are actually being made. And now you have some guys
Yeah,
that
I
have
mean,
moved up from the
you,
division, and we're probably never going to get to see any of those fights, as though it was kind of touted at first.
yeah, you gotta blame Germán Charlo for that. I think a large part of the blame is with him. He's playing it safe too much, and taking on opponents that are decent but not really, elite level or in any way. So yeah, I don't know really what he's and his people are thinking of now, because he has to. So I mean, as soon as possible, he should get a fight made with somebody, that is among the top 5 or 6.
Yeah, yeah, that would certainly help things in terms of yeah, Charlo. I remember there was a lot of hype when he moved up to 160, and for the most part, him and Jermel, his brother, they were both kind of fighting. They were both on that kind of same level. And
Mm,
as far as I'm concerned, Jermel has surpassed him in terms of his activity and being
mm,
able to become the undisputed fighter or undisputed champion at 154 pounds. And for Charlo, he's had a couple of good fights, but of course, it's just been a little bit too far in between, and I don't
yeah.
believe he's actually fought this year, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, you can't predict an injury. That being said, there's certainly some fights that have, if they've not, they are going by the wayside now, and the potential of them being made is looking less and less likely. And the question is, how long will Charlo stay at 160 pounds? I mean, he's been there for a few years now. And much
Yeah,
like Munguia, I guess you can say, he's been there, and we still haven't
yeah, of
seen him in
course.
any truly big fight. To
Yeah.
Charlo's credit, he has beat Derevianchenko, who was he's one of the better fighters at
Yeah.
160 pounds. But
Mm,
outside of that, he hasn't really done much else. Big Fish Vega says so many different styles in boxing. That's why fighters are brought up at a certain pace. That's certainly the case. So yeah, this is
yeah.
an interesting style for Janibek, and yeah, Denzel Bentley was able to. Hey, he was able to, throw a little wrench right there in the plans for Janibek as far as that build up. Big Fish Vegas
Yeah,
says,
of
I don't
course.
believe Bentley is near as good as Janibek, but it was obvious Denzel gave him problems.
As I told you, it has happened before when I was mentioning that fight that Nonito Near had with that guy, Concepcion. I think his name was Rafael or
Oh yeah,
something. That guy was never really elite, but he really gave him a lot of problems in that fight when Donaire was really basically destroying everybody, else. So he struggled in that fight for some reason. It's the styles, as you say, that make fights, and yeah, certain styles just don't, you just can't really fight well against certain, fighters because of they have styles that don't really suit you.
yeah. Yeah, that is true. Yeah, it's certainly. I mean, when you get that good mixture of varying opponents, then I think it certainly helps. And for whatever we
Yeah,
think about Canelo, I think that his willingness to take on some fighters in fights who stylistically seemed like they would be a problem for him, and they actually were a problem for him. You have to think that kind of helped him as he rose up there. Think about the Erislandy Lara
oh yeah,
fight. That is one of them.
definitely.
He took on Austin Trout. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I
These are
mean,
guys who don't bring you that same excitement as far as the
yeah.
matchup. If you're thinking you're going to have a ton of back and forth and all that. But that being said, they're good guys to be in there with to kind of help you get further developed and understand the different nuances to how individuals fight.
I mean, you can never be truly great if you only fight fighters that are, tailor made for you, or easy to beat. And that's why I got certain fighters who are like, especially those lower weights, were like being champions for 10 years in the past, has like they have like 15, 16 defenses. But when you look at it, who did they fight? Who did they beat really? It's maybe one or two big names, and the rest is just junk mostly, or guys that really were there to lose, simply. So yeah, that's
Yeah,
how
yeah.
it goes. While you have other fighters who were champions for a lot shorter amount of time, they maybe have three, four, five defenses they made success, but they beat all the best out there, or most of them anyway. So
Yeah,
yeah,
without a doubt. And Random Acoustic Thoughts, shout outs, thanks for coming on. And your avatar did come through. It shows well on our end. So uh, you can be assured of that. Good stuff, though. So also on this card, I think it's worth mentioning that Siniesa Estrada made her debut in a
but
minimum weight
yeah,
fight. And she took on a fighter by the last name of Villarino, who I hadn't seen or whatever,
the
but she's an Argentine
Argentinian,
fighter.
yeah,
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 yeah, yeah, as you mentioned. And Siniesa, she looked good in her debut with Top Rank. Previously, she was with Golden Boy. They had some issues as far as, I guess,
of
the
course,
next iteration of her career from a contractual perspective and pay. So she hadn't fought in pretty much a year, and she switched over, left Golden Boy. Her contract was up, I believe, and she joined Top Rank, who has been doing some good things there on the female side as far as how they help to kind of build up
yeah.
Michaela Mayer, amongst others. But
Seems
certainly
like
Michaela Mayer probably being the bigger star. And Cineasta, she pretty much was able to dominate for a good portion of the fight
yeah.
and won a decision that was unanimous over the 10 rounds. And I think it'll be interesting. Hopefully, Top Rank can keep her busy, and there are a lot of there are uh, a lot more eyes that are on the women in the sport these days. So she has the prospect of continuing to rise up, and I do like her overall. I like her style. I do like her personality and her demeanor, and she has super bad. That's her nickname. She has this sort of thing going for her. So she comes out with her cape super bad, and I think
All
she
right.
has the potential of becoming an even bigger name on the women's side.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I didn't see that fight, but it seems like Golden Boy is losing quite a lot of fighters lately, and some of them to Top Rank even, which are like their most bitter rivals, in America anyway.
So
And
yeah, that
yeah,
makes things interesting for sure. We were kind of speaking on that in the previous stream over on Fight Night Score, just because it kind of related in some sense. But with Jaime Munguia and the fact that we haven't seen him in a truly marquee fight thus far,
mm,
now that he's at 160 pounds, and whether or how much doing or how much of that is tied to Golden Boy, who, of course, they had Canelo, who was considered the cash cow of the sport, and that relationship withered away and Canelo left. And of course, they have Ryan Garcia, but at one point it looked like that relationship was about to end in,
mm,
I guess, dramatic fashion, but they somehow were able to work things back out. That being said, Garcia, of course, he still needs to kind of build back up that momentum and activity that he had prior to this whole falling
yeah,
out that
that's
they
the
had.
thing.
So
Yeah,
it leaves a question of what Golden Boy or what their outlook is, and whether they're truly trying to hold on to Munguia because he's sort of that last ditch effort in having sort of a star that they can sort of have in their back pocket who they help to build up. And ultimately, they probably just want to get him in some kind of major fight at some point that has the
mm,
most financial gain. Who knows?
yeah. Yeah, I hope they can really build up. I mean, Mongia to be because that kid has got real potential, obviously, and I mean his fighting style is so fan friendly, So we had enough of fighters who were talented, but not the most exciting always, at least to watch. With a lot of technical, defensive fighters who have been very successful, but they didn't really, excite people. So he's
Yeah,
got that kind of factor, the excitement factor, the knockout artist and all that.
yeah.
So
And he's 40-0 at this point, 26 years of age. I mean, theoretically, this should be his prime, or
mm,
he's in that sort of that in that
yeah,
span in
he's
which you can get even better. Uh,
yeah
because
he's
this is
reached
where
his
you're rising to your peak, rising to the peak of your physical abilities in some sense, or you're pushing towards
mm,
that as you continue to develop and all of that stuff. So I mean, that makes it interesting in itself. Like this seems like an ideal time that you would want to take advantage of as far as getting him those fights that are going to sort of push him to the top of
mm,
not only the division but the sport in itself, and get him in that position to be considered in those sort of just best across the
yeah,
board or pound for pound discussions. And that seems to
yeah.
have withered away a bit.
Yeah, you don't want to spoil him, like by kind of keeping him out of too many, hard fights. That's not the way to do it, of course. To have him resting on his laurels, as you say. Yeah, definitely
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, and we went essentially from a younger Munguia wanting to fight Triple G, while Triple G was legitimately the boogeyman of the division, to now we're just hoping to see Munguia in with someone who would actually give him a challenge. And we, of
Mm,
course, I think it's just by luck, you could say, maybe that he has been in some fights where he ended up getting challenged, even though they weren't names that were big. Like the Dennis Hogan fight is one I think of, and Dennis Hogan actually was. I thought he edged him on the cards,
yeah.
and his fight with Kelly. I can't think of his first name, but the guy Kelly, who I believe
Oh,
I
yeah.
forget what you.
Kelly,
I believe it's Kelly.
Damien or something. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, or maybe I'm thinking. Yeah, Jimmy Kelly. So yeah, Jimmy
Jimmy,
Kelly.
Jimmy, Jimmy Kilrain. Yeah, that's right. Jimmy
Yeah,
Kilrain.
Kilrain Kelly. So
Uh,
yeah, in that fight, Munguia was able to stop him, but that wasn't without Kelly finding a few points of success, and it looked like it was going to be a longer night for Munguia.
I
So
gotta see that fight. I haven't seen it really.
yeah, it
Uh,
was a fifth round win for Munguia, but Kelly troubled him there at a few points right there, even though this
mm,
is a short spurt of a fight. So he's had those situations where it was guys who don't have that name necessarily, and don't even necessarily have the names on their records that would make you
mm,
think that they would be a challenge, but they can box pretty well, and that's something I've noticed. These are guys who are less of the aggressive fighters, who are probably more comfortable just boxing, countering, and
mm,
kind of working from a fundamental standpoint. So we still yet to see Munguia in with someone like that at the elite levels, as far as I'm concerned.
mm. I think actually the middleweight division kind of has quite a lot of hidden talents. Not really obvious, but guys that are there, they can box. It's just that they don't always win, of course. So
Yeah.
that's why there aren't so many elite. I mean, those that are considered elite, but you got guys like that. Also maybe yeah, Spike O'Sullivan
Oh yeah.
or who really are tough, can box, can fight, but maybe they have a style that's a little bit too, I don't know, rough or reckless, so they tend to lose their biggest fights because of that. So Yeah, it's
Yeah.
still, it will always be a division with enough talent. I think it's just that maybe because of super middleweight has gotten quite a lot of attention. That it's not now getting so much attention right now.
Yeah, you're right. And I was just looking back, and I think at one point, of course, the ship has sailed on it now, but it would have been cool to see Munguia in there with like David Lemieux, uh,
Yeah, yeah,
who, of course,
that ship has
moved
sailed.
up.
Yeah,
But I think that would have certainly helped him out right there, because I think that had that potential of being an exciting fight, and it would have been a good name to have on his
and a
resume as well.
dangerous one also
Yep,
for
a
Maria.
dangerous one for sure, for sure. But the ship has kind of sailed on that, so now
Oh
we're at the point
yeah,
where it's just a matter of, for Munguia. I mean, just looking at who's out there, as we mentioned, Chris Eubank, maybe even Carlos Adames. I know that's something you mentioned in
oh
some chats
yeah.
that we were having.
Adames, that's right. That's a guy who can potentially going
High
to
risk,
do
low reward
something.
for him, of course.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Certainly, certainly that.
yeah, he can at least get to fight, for the world title, and I think he will because he's got a few good wins already, and he beat Derevenchenko, of course. That's so far his best victory. But in his last fight, I know he also won by a knockout. I just don't remember who he fought. But anyway, he's a strong fighter. Really likes to mix it up and very aggressive. And yeah,
Yeah, and at this point, for him, pretty much everyone that you could potentially face here at 160 is going to be more in that high risk,
mm,
low reward category, outside of, say, Triple G, a name that's still out there. And I don't know how, if Golden Boy is willing to let him travel to such places, and of course time will tell. But say he took on Ryota Murata in Japan, which is very much a fight he could win, that
yeah,
would have a lot of fanfare over in Japan, of course, and I think it would
yeah,
sell well over there. But at this point, yeah, I don't know that they would send him over there, of course. And now that Murata doesn't have a title anymore, that makes it
yeah,
even less
especially,
likely. So he's
yeah,
running out of options, truly, that will sort of take him over the edge, unless he could get a Triple G, potentially. That may be who they're gunning for, because
yeah.
outside of that,
I
I don't
mean,
think there
yeah,
are enough bigger names, except for maybe Chris Eubank Jr., that will boost him to that level that we thought he would be at this point.
who is actually now fighting? Wasn't he gonna fight like light heavyweight or something
Yeah, I
next?
think he's slated to fight here very soon against
Yeah.
someone.
So
Uh,
he's at least a super middleweight. I mean, so I don't think he will fight at 160 anymore. But maybe you are talking about moving Mungia moving up, maybe. Uh,
yeah, I just
from
looked. It says Chris Eubank Jr., Liam Smith is inching closer. This is what some of the reports or stories that are out there, in doing a quick
Liam
Google.
Smith. Oh yeah, I did. That's right. I heard about. Oh yeah,
So maybe he's going to stay there at
that's
160
the one.
for
I
that.
thought. You know what? I thought that was Callum Smith. That's why I thought.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Of course, Callum, he's at 175 now.
yeah, because that's kind of something. Yeah, Eubank at 175. I don't think
Oh, yeah.
he would have
No,
done
that
that.
would be a new division for him. Of course, I think he could probably uh, carry
He
it.
can
But
make
that
it.
being said,
Yeah,
yeah, it would
yeah.
be tougher for him, certainly at 175.
Oh yeah, and
Uh,
they got those guys of course Callum and Beterbiev who just could have knocked him
yeah,
out, clean cold.
kind of given
So
where he's at in his career, of course, he might find more treasures there at 160 or 168, at the moment,
mm,
at least. Even 168, I think, will be. There's some tough fighters there, especially if you're trying to
yeah,
get to a title. So 160 with Triple G there on the back end, tail end of his career. I mean, that's open. Then you have Munguia, who's still not truly proven, at 160.
yeah,
I mean, yeah, it's pretty much wide open at this point, especially with Andre apparently fighting or intending to move up to 168. 160 is it's like the Wild West at this point. Just a bunch of guys who are there. Some have belts, but no one that you can definitively say is the best in the division, even with Triple G, considering that he's not really
You
or we don't know
forgetting
what's next for him overall, you know.
you forgetting one name, Demetrius Andrade.
Well, yeah, I mean, assuming he isn't going to be competing at 168 pounds, yeah, I do
Yeah,
have I do hold him in high regards. I think he has that talent and level of ability to be the guy, but of course,
yeah, definitely.
he was I guess someone who was mentioned with
I
Janibek,
mean,
but that didn't happen.
he at least on the scorecards beat Suletsky much clearer than
Yeah,
Danny Jacobs did actually.
yeah.
So
And
I
Andre
don't
looked
know.
good in his last fight. He knocked out that UK fighter. Can't think of his name, but he got that stoppage, which is something that he was always sort of criticized for. That he would dominate a fighter early on, and did it would end up
Yeah,
going to decision. You know?
yeah, he like against Liam Williams, he had him down in the third round maybe,
Yeah,
and then twice, and then he just failed to finish him off, and it went to the scorecard. So
yeah. Had been a lot of that with his career, and now, of
yeah,
course, it's
people
just a
hate
matter
that, People hate to see that, of course.
of yeah. Yeah, certainly. And now it's just a matter of what does he do next. And
It's kind of like that guy who fought before. I know his name is. Well, he was a cruiserweight, Grigory Grozd.
okay,
You remember him? He was the one who beat Lodarchik for. He took the title from him. Anyway, that was I remember that fight, the WBC I think title. Yeah. So he had him.
you had to be a cruiserweight diehard to know that.
Yeah, but I know I know I actually watched that fight live,
Okay.
So it was kind of yeah, it was a while ago, 2014, I think. Yeah,
Okay, cool. Yeah, they still, cruiserweight, as we were mentioning, they've always had some pretty solid talent there. Haven't quite
yeah,
gotten that. I guess is you're stuck between heavyweight and light heavyweight, which are two sort of marquee divisions in the sport, original divisions in
yeah.
some sense. So a lot of
It's
people just kind of skip over cruiserweight.
yeah. I mean, you had fighters who were not really heavyweights, but were always trying. Why not just stay at cruiserweight? Come on, man,
Yeah.
don't try to go up to heavyweight when you're just gonna get knocked out, by the best heavyweights, of course.
And then you seldom get at least these days, get an American heavyweight who's a name at cruiserweight, which I think would help at least in terms of the American
Michael,
audience, because outside of those who are really fans of the sport in that sense, yeah, you're going to be looking at guys from countries like Latvia, of course,
yeah,
other some UK, then maybe
uh,
Russia and some other
New
countries.
Zealand, yeah, I believe Opetaya,
New
yeah,
Zealand, yeah, Opataya, yeah, you're right. They're going to be from all over, so it's a very diverse division as far as
yeah,
the talent there up top. But usually, of course,
very
not
from
any
South
huge
Africa
names.
also. You had that guy Mchunu from South Africa, and yeah,
Oh yeah.
Not Afolabi, but
And even
Makabu,
Makabu, who's still out there. He's what is he?
Congo. He's
Where's
from
he from?
Congo.
Oh, Congo.
Congo.
Okay, yeah. So Congo. I mean,
Mm,
Usyk, he was from Ukraine, and of course, he's
yeah.
become more of a name there. But while he was at cruiserweight, of course, I
Then you
mean,
had
he was kind of building his name, and
you had a guy who was from the same parts as I originally. Well, almost Marco Hook.
oh yeah, Marco Hook. Yeah, he was
Yeah,
there. He was a big name there for a long period of time, and
yeah. He
yeah,
lived in Germany, but
never
yeah,
became a household name, I guess you can say.
no, he kind of, I don't know what happened really. Well, it was when Usyk was dominating. He got to fight him in that
Yeah,
Super 8 or however you call Super
yeah,
6
World
maybe.
Boxing Super Series.
Yeah, so there was no winning, of course, against Usyk in that fight. Yeah, I
And
mean,
and I think what would have boosted them, because the World Boxing Super Series, both of the editions of it have been great. They have been awesome. I think some of these bigger networks should have jumped on that, because
mm,
generally all of the fights delivered. It was well matched in terms of those who chose to
oh
participate in
yeah,
them. And I think that was an
yeah,
opportunity that had it gotten the fanfare that the original world what is it, World Boxing, or that Super Six or whatever, with Andre Ward
yeah,
and all of them from back in the day. See, that had a lot of backing, but the structure of it kind of lended to it kind of just being a little bit clunky or
mm,
whatever, with the point system and all that. World Boxing Super Series is just kind of one and done if you lose or whatever, and it had a great structure to it. Yet it didn't have that American backing like it should have had, as far as those networks and maybe even some other
yeah,
networks across the board, even in the UK and things of that nature. I think
yeah. I
that would have
mean,
definitely been a boost for it.
I remember also when that first Super Six, I believe it was, it's also the tournament from began 2009.
Yeah,
And they kind of super middleweight, at super middleweight, and they left out actually Lucian Boutte, who was the IBF champion back
yeah,
then.
that
They
is
left
true.
out him. Come on, man. And they
He was
had like
always on the
Arthur.
outside, and there was a wonder of, is he the best super middleweight in
Yeah.
the world? Of
And
course, there was
they
answers
had
later, but
Arthur Abraham, who had never fought at 168 before, just before, because he was big at 160. So
yeah, that is true. I think it helped all of those guys build the name for sure. I have a poster over here because I had entered a contest Showtime was doing at the
oh,
time. I have
yeah,
it framed, and it's the Super Six. So you have Mikhail Kessler, Andre Ward, Carl Frost, Jermaine Taylor, and
yeah,
Andre
Jermaine.
Durrell. And of
It
course,
would have been, yeah, better if they never included Jermaine for himself,
oh
also
yeah,
for
yeah.
his sake.
Hey, but that helped kind of boost Arthur Abraham for sure.
Oh yeah,
And then just with the structure of it, of course, as we got more towards the end, I mean, Glenn Johnson was in there, Alan Green was in there.
yeah, Glenn
Uh,
Johnson.
I can't remember if there were some other replacements, but we did get some great fights out of it, like the Frotch
Hmm.
Kessler, freaking
Yeah, Froch Kessler and Froch. I remember Froch Abraham was very one-sided. And, I was actually the only one. I remember at this site, this boxing site, who picked Froch to win that fight. Everybody else thought Abraham was going to win.
oh
And
wow,
Froch kind of wins all the 12 rounds. I think he won in that fight. So I
yeah.
was feeling so good about myself.
Yeah, I had
'Cause-
Frotch as well, I believe. Well, I can't remember with 100% certainty, but I always liked Frotch, and I thought he was, yeah,
yeah,
of course, he didn't have that super polished look or whatever, but I think he made up for it with just his grit, and his
mm, he
uh,
was.
he had an attitude about him, when he was in there.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, like he could box when he wanted to, box well when he wanted to, as they say, and he could also brawl very well, as we know,
Yeah, yeah.
punch and stuff like that. Yeah,
Yeah, he generally had some very exciting fights. Of course, the fight with
yeah,
Ward wasn't exciting just because stylistically it's
oh
just
yeah,
total,
war, yeah,
yeah, different type of matchup. Of course, in anytime
yeah,
you're in with
that
Ward,
was.
you're gonna be slowed down just given his style.
Mm.
But yeah, generally he was in some pretty exciting fights. There were wars that you said, like those Groves fights, those fights
Yeah, I
with Groves.
remember. When it comes to war, I never really heard of him before that when he
Yeah,
entered that series. And then I had that friend who was from, shout out to Ryan Bivens from Philadelphia.
salute.
And he told me, like, oh, he's so good, he's going to be the best. I was like, all right. I didn't really believe him. I thought he was just hyping the guy. And then
Hmm.
afterwards he won. And I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, I
He
think it
was
was
really
like that.
right.
Yeah, yeah, certainly. Even as an American, prior to him being announced in that tournament, I don't think I actually really knew who he was. And then I
Mm,
had to look into him, and after looking into him, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna stand behind him. I'm gonna back Andre Ward, see how he does in here. Of course,
yeah.
and this was of course, going to be
I
a test
mean,
for him and Darrell alike.
yeah,
And
nobody at 168 could beat him back then. I mean, maybe, I mean, if he fought Butte, it's a pity he didn't, but I don't think he would have really beaten him either,
yeah,
Butte. But it would have been a much better fight than Froch versus Ward anyway.
yeah, I think if you would have polled people at the time, then many probably would have viewed Mikhail Kessler as being the most likely to come out on top.
Yeah, but he wasn't, he wasn't really at his prime anymore. That
Yeah,
was kind of obvious. He wasn't very active also before the fight. Had one smaller fight in between, like, and well, anyway, he was always, even though he did have, of course, some skills, but he was always more of a puncher, offensive fighter than
yeah, the
technical
Viking
defense.
warrior.
Yeah, a warrior, Viking warrior, of
Yeah,
course.
but yeah, it definitely helped to. I think it helped to boost everyone's stock. To a certain degree, at least. Of course, when
Yeah,
Jermaine Taylor, of course, boosted
it
his
was a good,
stock
yeah.
towards. Hey,
For
maybe he
him, it
should
was
settle
like
down and not continue forward. But
downwards, downward
yeah,
spiral. Yeah, it was. Anyway, it was a good idea, and it was the first such really big tournament. I know that, for instance, there was a tournament that was on a much smaller scale, a heavyweight one, like in that Cedric Kushner he had. Like it was called Thunderbox, so
oh,
it was
okay,
like 2002, I don't know, something like that. So I believe who won that one? I don't remember. I know that there was there was Maurice Harris, maybe. Yeah, that's right, and Derek Jefferson. Maybe, I don't know. So
oh, okay,
mm. So that was, yeah. I mean, the first big tournament between 2009 and I guess
yeah,
2011, something like that.
yeah. Ended up somewhere around there. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I know it took a little bit longer because some stuff had to be shifted and
Good,
postponed, and of
good
course,
old days.
yeah. So it was only one fight for Darrell and Jermaine Taylor in the tournament.
Yeah, he was like disqualified. I know he wasn't disqualified in that fight against Frog, but he just, I think, didn't fight a
Yeah,
lot. He was grabbing a lot and holding and stuff. And
that was a
yeah,
crazy fight for all the wrong reasons, I guess you can say.
yeah. Then he had that fight when he was won by disqualification against Abraham, and he was like, he didn't
hmm
know what had happened. Like
Oh
after the
yeah,
fight.
yeah. That was great. So yeah, he had probably the two just craziest fights in the tournament, I would say.
Yeah, he had the talent, obviously, but he just didn't have the mental strength. I mean, his brother has more like this, but I don't know. In terms of talent, they are maybe around the same. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
Anthony,
Interestingly enough, he fought. I think it was last week. He got a victory over somebody. I can't remember exactly who it was.
yeah,
Who
it's
the
like
thought that
low
Darrell
key,
would still
right?
be here?
Yeah, low key fights, like.
Yeah, yeah, certainly. It's pretty amazing. That yeah, he's the only one that remains active from that bunch, actually.
Yeah, that's funny. That's strange. I mean,
Yeah, it is. It is. And Ward hasn't fought in 5+ years now. It's crazy.
oh yeah, that's right.
I remember many thought he would come back and take on Canelo or something like that. I remember when they were throwing that out there,
Yeah.
bunch of stuff and like, oh, is he gonna come back? Maybe he'll come back and fight better BF, but no, he stayed retired.
It's a shame he couldn't fight. The one fight everybody would have paid to watch was War versus Calzaghe.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just imagine that
Yep.
fight. Wow, man.
Yeah,
Two
timing didn't
greatest.
quite work out.
Yeah. Two of the most clever guys to fight at 168 and 175 in
Yeah,
God knows how long.
yeah, makes for an interesting fantasy matchup.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think
I'm not gonna start talking about it now. Who won that fight?
yeah, yeah.
I don't know really. I don't know. That's my answer. That's very very tough to know to determine. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. That definitely one of those thought provoking ones.
I mean, I know Joe himself. He said like, well, they asked him about. He said, "What if I fought Andre Ward? I'd beat him." That's right. That's all he said. was very confident. I beat.
Yeah. So it was an interesting one. Certainly. Certainly an interesting one. Uh, yeah. Who knows? But
Yeah, it would have been
so
very close anyway.
yeah, certainly that both Hall of Famers now. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So so last or yesterday, I guess it was last night in the UK, we got to see. I don't know if you saw it, but the next revision between Ricky Hatton and Marco
Oh
Antonio
no,
Barrera.
no, I didn't see that because
But
yeah,
yeah,
I
it was
was
just one of those little sort of
too busy.
fun
I'm
fights.
actually now watching the highlights of Sonny Edwards versus Felix Alvarado.
Oh, so that's one I didn't get to catch. I was actually looking
Yeah.
for it, and I couldn't pull it up. So I ended up watching. There was another fight that I feel was on at that particular time. Oh yeah, Nick Ball versus someone Rubio, but I didn't even see the actual Nick Ball fight. As a matter of fact.
Yeah, it's kind of hard sometimes when you have to have different channels and stuff. Yeah, I mean, yeah, some people
Looks like
they
he got
have
a first round knockout.
yeah.
And David Adderley fought, and he got a second round KO over Mexican heavyweight by the
Well,
name of.
Sonny won on points, so it was a rather close fight, obviously. So it was very, of course, very lots of exchanges as usual for flyweights. It's yeah.
I know that I thought that it would be a fairly not necessarily easy but clear win for Edwards. But I haven't seen the fight, so I don't know. So it looks like Alvarado
Yeah,
did put up a fight to a certain degree,
yeah.
I guess.
It was like, I mean, only one judge had it a little bit wider, 116, 112. The other two, 115, 113. Yeah.
Well, I know Sonny
So,
Edwards. He wants
yeah, he's the,
Julio Cesar Martinez, which I think would be a great fight.
yeah, or he said actually he wants Bam Bam
Oh,
Rodriguez
he wants
also.
Bam now.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that would be a very good one right there as well. I like
Oh,
Bam.
yeah.
What is
I
this?
mean, Sonny is definitely one of the best British boxers right now. So,
Flyweight. So this is 112,
yeah.
right? So 112
But
pounds.
because he is a flyweight, he's not getting enough, I guess, recognition, or enough PR, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know of his name. Of course, we know of his name and all that stuff. Yeah, and
Mm,
yeah, of course, I guess he's legitimately one of the top fighters out of the UK.
mm,
Certainly, it hasn't reached that level of some of the bigger fighters, which tends to be the case with some of the smaller weights. And of course, this was
yeah.
on Fight, so I guess that doesn't help. It's hard to, unless you're familiar with
Mm,
Fight.com or whatever, Fight TV or whatever they call it, then that seemed to be the only means for watching it in the US and the UK. So that is almost like a pay per view in some sense.
I see now. This was his third defense as IBF champion. So I guess soon we are going hopefully to see a big fight, maybe unification, against I don't know who else is. Right now I cannot remember the other champions, but yeah.
Yeah, I saw someone had
Well,
added
yeah,
someone had added Bam on Twitter or
but
whatever,
he's a
saying that
super
he's next.
flyweight, right? Yeah, he's a super flyweight, isn't he?
Uh, uh, Someone had added Bam Rodriguez on Twitter with a tweet of Sonny Edwards or something like that, saying "You're next" or whatever, and Bam replied back with a like cool thumbs up. So maybe we get that.
Yeah, but isn't he like a super flyweight? Bam Bam.
Yeah, so they
Yeah,
said that he can fight at 112. He can fight between 112 and 118. Apparently, that's what at
right.
least has come from his team.
Because I don't think Sonny would be willing to just give up his title yet to move up. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm looking here. So Sonny, he has fought at 150. Well, I guess 114. I guess so. I imagine 115. Super. He has fought at Superfly, but it hasn't been since 20.
Yeah,
Oh, I
he
guess
has. Yeah.
2020.
Yeah, it's actually rather recently in 2020.
Mhm. But
Yes.
that being
Yeah.
said, of course, he has a title here. Well, I guess both of them have a title, so
Mm.
that makes it
Yeah, then
interesting, right?
it's not so easy, yeah, to just, yeah.
Yeah, both of them have a title in the opposite division, so
Mm.
that makes it interesting right there. But Bam, yeah, his team has said he can go down to 112, and he can go up to 118. So there are a lot of intriguing matchups for
Damn,
Bam
damn.
for sure. But
Mm.
Julio Cesar Martinez, of course, as mentioned. Let me see where he's at.
Mm.
He had, went up and fought
Ooh.
Chocolatito and pretty much lost clearly and definitively.
All right. Well,
Uh,
anyway, it's I mean, it's just good that there is because those divisions, those small divisions, are usually dominated by fighters from Latin America and Asia or East Asia. So
mhm.
it's nice to have also somebody from somewhere else from Europe, for instance, or from England in this case, of course, because
Yeah.
everybody else is like from some kind of, I don't know, exotic place.
So yeah, so Julio Cesar Martinez, that was back in March. So yeah, it was this year. Seems like it was longer ago, but he had fought Chocolatito, and he moved up to Superfly, and he came in overweight. Then
Chocolate.
recognize that he came in overweight, and he had been fighting at 112. So I guess the
Hmm.
verdict's still out on what he's gonna do weight wise.
Yeah, yeah.
Who'd have thought he would have come in overweight, moving up? But we've seen it before, I guess.
It's like that joke when they made joke about these heavyweights who were just out of shape and he didn't make the weight for that fight at heavyweight.
Yeah, like come on, man. Like, come on, what the heck is going on here?
He was that out of shape. They didn't let him fight.
Yep.
Well, I have seen really. I mean, it's just appalling. Some boxers I've seen before. You can hardly call them boxers. They were like just fat. I mean, so lardy.
Yeah.
Like everything is like just shaking on them. Every yeah,
I felt that was the case with Michael Hunter and his move up to heavyweight
yeah. He got also kind of
because
porky.
he was a solidly built cruiserweight. I feel like
Yeah.
his move up to heavyweight wasn't in a structured fashion like Alexander Usyk, for instance.
Oh yeah, because it's not. Yeah, I don't know really. I don't know why he moved up, but
Yeah, maybe it
hmm,
was tough for him to make 200, but that being said,
yeah. And then he kind of gets lucky, and he gets a win over the guy who is like a stopper, 6'6", Martin Bakoli.
oh yeah, and he had that
Because
fight with that some think he won against Alexander
Povet
Usyk. I mean not
Povet
Usyk, but
Povetkin.
Povetkin. Yeah.
Yeah, that was like one hell of a fight. Wow, I
hmm
did see it. I watched it. Yeah, that was a great fight. All
Yeah, it
action.
was.
Hmm.
It was. It
That
was a
was
good one.
that was a crazy fight.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, looking at Hunter, he hasn't fought since 21 now. He drew with Jerry Forrest.
Mm,
That was in
Jerry.
December of 2021, so he's about to be a year out.
Wow. Well, anyway, I saw that earlier when we were having that fight night scores night that Arsene Goulamirian is scheduled to fight, and
Oh
he
yeah.
hasn't had a fight since December 2019.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah, I wasn't familiar with him and the guy he's fighting. But yeah, this is a title fight there at cruiserweight.
yeah. So that's even worse because he was, the champion at the WBA, I think. Yeah, and so they kind of let him not fight for so long. Come on, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would like to shoot his management. I would lock them up.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, yeah,
Crazy.
that's apparently. I guess he had COVID. I think that's what was mentioned in
Well, even
stream.
so, did
In
he
the
have it for like a year and a half? I don't think so.
well, yeah, certainly. Yeah, I don't know if it was lingering that long, but
Yeah,
yeah, definitely. This has been a good while as far as him being out of the ring or whatever, and
yeah.
yeah, that is So what that is, I need. I'll try to check it out, but I don't know if it's going to be one that is necessarily going to be on any like
Well, yeah,
notable challenge.
yeah. Because yeah, I was really kind of wondering about him. I didn't see him fight yet, so I was like wondering how good he was really and how he would do against the best guys out there at
Yeah,
cruiserweight, of course.
yeah. I guess time will tell, right? Time will
Yeah,
tell. See how he does when he gets
only
up there in the
time will
mix.
tell. But he's still, actually seems like he's still got the title. Well, yeah, because this is fight, yeah, as you said, is for the title against Alexei Egorov. Hmm, nice.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. So also on that sort of the main fights, the legit fights on that card that hadn't in Barrera had that exhibition. Natasha Jonas became undisputed at
Yeah,
154 pounds by defeating Marie Eve Dicaire, who only loss came at the hands of Clarissa Shields a year or so back, maybe a little bit more than that. But yeah, I thought that Natasha Jonas dominated in that fight. I gave her 9 of the 10 rounds. There might have been another one that you could have given an argument for Dicaire, but all of the clean and clear effective punches, they were landed by Jonas, and she busted up Decaire's nose, which was bleeding, uh,
hmm,
probably from around the sixth or seventh round on. And I thought that Jonas boxed very well, and hopefully we get to see her in with another, I guess, elite at 154, which she has all the belts now. Clarissa Shields previously competed there for a little period, became undisputed there. Whether or not she goes back down, who knows? But that may be an opportunity to have a big fight, especially in the UK, along with a potential Savannah Marshall rematch. Then you have Jessica McCaskill, who's willing to travel for sure, who was undisputed at 147. If she were to go up to 154, then that makes for a very interesting matchup as well. So time
hmm.
will tell.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, yeah, I guess there will always be people who will not want to watch female boxing, but there are a lot of fights. I mean, good fights they're getting made. I mean, between
Yeah,
the best anyway. Yeah.
yeah.
So,
So yeah, and this was a pretty good one. Then oh yeah, Terry
hmm,
Harper's there at 154 now, and I think she picked up a title in her last fight. So that may be even more of one that will be made over at 154. So she beat Hannah Rankin, and Terry picked up the IBO in the WBA Super, or no, this is WBA World Super Welterweight. So maybe this is the regular
hmm,
WBA title. Hard to freaking tell.
hmm,
Also, also maybe it's not undisputed. It's more so just unified for Natasha Jonas actually, because she picked up the IBF title in this one. So stand corrected. I think I said that on the Fight Night stream as well, that it was undisputed, but it looks like Terry Harper beating Hannah Rankin got the WBA. So she
it's
can
just
become undisputed if she beats Terry Harper. And I
hmm,
think that's a good matchup because Terry Harper looked good there in her first fight at 154 against Hannah Rankin, who's been in with like Carissa Shields, and I think some other top names there. So interesting.
yeah.
I think Savannah Marshall as well. Maybe Savannah Marshall even stopped Rankin, I believe.
So yeah, maybe
So
it's
makes for interesting potential. So we'll see if that actually comes about. Then
Yeah.
Dalton Smith, he fought on this card as well. I thought he looked pretty decent against this guy by the name of Benjamin. I can't remember his first name, but he gave him a pretty close and at sometimes tough fight. I think
Mhm.
Dalton Smith did a bit more, and he ended up getting the decision. And I scored it. I believe I had Dalton winning probably around 8 rounds. I think I had it 116, 112. But it was a good fight.
Bro.
Had some good moments, and some
Yeah.
moments of some back and forth, some
Well,
exchanges. Good style for Dalton Smith to face as well as they look to continue to push him towards that world level.
mm, Dalton Smith, yeah. All right.
Yeah, and there's this big UK heavyweight by the name of, I believe his name is Fraser Clark.
Fraser
He
Clark,
fought.
yeah.
It wasn't
Maybe.
overly impressive in this particular fight, to be honest with you. But that being said, it was, I guess, a step up for him. His name is Big Freeze. Yeah, he's only 4-0. This made him 4-0. This was his first time going the distance, but he's
Yeah,
a big
there are
6'6" guy.
several UK heavyweights. I mean, coming up. I mean, prospects like Johnny Fisher that I told you
Oh
about.
yeah,
And
yeah,
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 you got, of course, Fabio Wardley fighting next weekend against Nathan Gorman.
yeah. That should be a good one.
Yeah,
Good
I
test.
think Fabio will probably starch him, but anyway.
Yeah,
Um,
I favor Fabio. Yeah, we'll see where Gorman is mentally, and if
yeah,
he's able
I
to
like.
build upon anything that he had going
Yeah,
for him prior to the Dubois fight.
I like that Fabio doesn't really, Worley doesn't really waste his time really often. He just goes at it, he gets them out as soon as he can. So, he's
Yeah, I
not,
think he needs to definitely defeat
yeah,
Gorman if he's expected to be in the mix as
he should really,
being
yeah.
pushed by
But
that.
if he doesn't knock him out, I will not be impressed.
Yeah,
Simply.
yeah, yeah. I
So
guess you
now,
can look at Dubois as sort of as a gauge as far as it helped
yeah,
Dubois ultimately get that fight with
he knocked out,
Joe Joyce, and then
yeah,
now he has a title. Interestingly enough,
he knocked out Gorman in 5 rounds. Yeah.
yeah. And I remember I favored Dubois in that fight. A lot of people favored Gorman though because they
Oh
felt
yeah,
that he
I
was
don't
like,
know.
well,
Yeah, I
yeah,
favored Dubois also, of course.
yeah,
But yeah, he didn't know what he was coming up against Joyce. That guy is not human.
yeah. It certainly is as his chin is definitely not from this world.
Yeah, so because Dubois was getting the better of him in the first, I don't know, 6, 7 rounds, something like that. He definitely was, doing better and scoring with big shots and all that clean. But then, you could see him just the jab. Also, Joyce kind of closed his eye and stuff. And yeah,
Yeah,
that was simply unfortunate. But yeah,
yeah,
hopefully he can bounce back now. Yeah,
yeah,
that would be nice.
yeah.
fight, fight
Well,
someone like Jared Anderson maybe next. And yeah.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I like Jared
Hmm.
Anderson. I think he certainly got next there at the
Hmm.
in the heavyweight division as far as the American scene. So it'll be good to see,
Yeah,
if
many
he can
seem
continue
to
to build up
really,
that
really
momentum.
Many seem to really rate him quite high. Yeah,
Has a good
that
pedigree. Many
that's
seems to have
important.
the mentality as well to want to be great.
Yeah, once you have those two things, and you can be pretty unstoppable.
Certainly, certainly. Um, then, of course, I guess the last sort of big fight of the weekend was Montana Love against
Oh yeah,
Steve Spark of Australia,
the
who lost to
infamous
Tim
fight.
Zoo.
Yeah,
I
Was
don't know how
it?
much of that you were able to catch, but it was Steve Spark
Not
was winning that
none.
fight. He was aggressive, and it looks like he was coming in with the intent that, hey, this is my last opportunity, so I'm going 100 miles per hour. And he was beating Montana Love. Actually, dropped him, and uh,
Wow.
looked like he was at points going to stop Montana Love,
Hmm.
who was a bit reluctant to engage head on with Steve Spark. But he is, I guess, more of the boxer type, and I don't think he's
Hmm.
a bigger puncher as what it may seem. But that being
Yeah.
said,
Right.
Steve Spark, man, he looked big and solid there at the weight, and he was bullying Montana Love at times, and it ultimately led to a sequence where after a headbutting cut and the action resuming, they were up against the ropes, and Montana Love forced him over the ropes and out of the ring. Steve Spark landed on his feet, which was
Hmm.
very cat-like of him, and he was ready to hop back in, but the referee disqualified him. Actually, well, disqualified Montana Love for
Yeah.
intentionally
Yeah.
throwing him out of the
As
ring.
he should have. Yeah. Of
Yeah,
course. Yeah. It's not wrestling. It's boxing.
true.
So
They
yeah.
tried to plead their case that he wasn't trying to throw him out. He was just there. He was pushing his arm up or whatever. And you had some saying, "Hey, it was a bad decision or whatever."
Excuses.
You're
Yeah.
gonna have
Probably.
you're gonna have those on Montana Love side saying, "Oh, the referee he was wrong for doing that," or this was too much or whatever. But it was intentional. It seemed that it was intentional. And while he may not have necessarily picked him up and then just kind of threw him over, you could tell he
Yeah.
had the
Right.
intent of pushing him out of the ring when he saw that sort of
Because he
opening.
just couldn't get to him in any other way, in boxing way.
Yes. So the notion was that Montana Love, at least what he was saying in the aftermath, was that he was just looking to get Steve Spark to the middle or the late rounds, and then he was going to drown him. But I believe, and I think this was highlighted by Big Fish Vega in that Fight Night Score stream. I do believe that, yeah, Steve Spark looked like he was not about to back down, and he had the
Mm,
momentum in that fight, and he was essentially bullying Montana Love. And Montana Love, he was trying to box, but Steve Spark was not having it. He wanted to fight, and he was making it rough and tough for him. So this leads me to believe that if they were to fight again, Steve Spark would still have that sort of edge over him in that sense. And I don't know that Montana Love would have come back to sort of drown him or beat him in the later rounds as he suggested. But it would
yeah.
have been interesting, to see it finish out. But I do think all momentum and it seemed that everything up to that point was heavily in the favor of Steve Spark, who was very aggressive and looked like he wanted it more.
Right. Huh. I haven't seen that fight, but I'll try to find it.
Yeah, yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next, whether there's a rematch or whatever. But it ended up being a DQ victory for Steve Spark, who picks up the WBA Intercontinental Super Lightweight title. So wouldn't be
Hmm.
surprised if we see Steve Spark there in the mix with some other names there at 140 pounds, I believe is what this will be. So he's lost to Tim Zoo, and he lost in his second fight back in 2015, but he seemingly improved since then, of course. And Tim Zoo, hey, he's getting ready to fight for the 154-pound belt. And as mentioned, yeah, he went up to 154 to fight Tim Zoo, of course, who fights there. Of course, it's a big fight in Australia because Tim Zoo is probably the marquee name there in Australia, given, of course, who his father is and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
of course.
But Steve Spark actually is more of a 140 pounder, so he certainly, yeah, that definitely makes you look at that loss a bit different.
Yeah, I know that Team 2 is really big, of course.
Yeah.
In Australia, I don't know if he hasn't had anything so far I could see on Boxrec scheduled, but yeah, I think there were talks of him fighting. I'm who was
Jermel,
it?
right? Jermel.
Yeah, I
I
think
thought it was actually happening for some reason.
somebody like, yeah, I think Jamel probably it was, yeah, because he's been on the he's 21-0 and has won some a lot of his fights by stoppage by knockout, and yeah,
Yeah,
he's
so they
got
were
the
saying.
name. Yeah.
So what I'm seeing here on this sportingnews.com, they say that even though it's not on that actual thing, but it looks or on box rec or whatever, it looks like the Zoo versus Charlo is intended to be set for January 28th, 2023.
Wow. All right. That's sounds very good, very interesting. Of course.
But
Yeah.
apparently, according to this one site, I know that I was under the impression it was going to be happening. It was a done deal. It looks like it's tentative
Hmm.
in some sense, but I guess scheduled to a certain degree. Uh, so
Well,
yeah,
that's good. Let's hope so. Yeah.
Coppinger reported it as well. So I guess it's pretty much a done deal. I guess in that
Hmm.
sense, or at least closer to
Right.
happening as opposed to not happening. So we'll see.
Hmm.
So that should
Cool.
be
Cool.
interesting. Tim Zoo versus Jamal Charlo. That'll
Yeah.
probably make for
Jamal.
a
Yeah.
somewhat entertaining fight.
Oh yeah. Definitely. I wonder what will if Sue can really do something to at least make it really tough and rough for. I think he can, of course, but can he win that fight? That's another thing that I'm kind of skeptical about. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
maybe they fight in Australia. I don't know.
No, I'm with you there for sure. So yeah, we'll
Yeah,
see how things shake up.
yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of the major action of the weekend. I
That's
don't think
the
there was
gist of it.
anything else of true significance.
Yeah,
Looks like coming up some big fights. We kind of mentioned some in that
yeah.
fight night stream, but the big one, of course, Prograis versus Zapata, which I think is a very good fight. And
On the
it doesn't
26th.
have the it's not getting the uh, sort of publicity that I feel it deserves. But that being said, it's I'm guessing a smaller promotion called
Mm,
Marv Nation or something like that, and that may be why. Of course, it's not a huge promoter who is actually carrying it. But that being said, I
right.
think it's a very good fight, a very good stylistic matchup as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm really excited about that fight. And Prograis hasn't really had so many fights the last couple of years. So yeah.
Yeah,
Zepeda, of course, we know he can punch, he can bang, and take a good punch also. So yeah, it's not really a safe fight for Prograis. Mm,
no, yeah. I think it's going to be interesting stylistically. Zepeda is more of a counter puncher, or at least that's where he does his best work on the counter. Uh, Prograis, he is very much more of an offensive fighter, come forward style, but he's very crafty. He does a lot of good head movement and upper body movement when he's going in and throwing those punches. So I think he's going to be the aggressor, and that's going
mm,
to make it interesting given Zepeda's style and what he does best. So, because Prograis, he won't be as reckless as say uh, uh, Baranchik, who is very much an offensive fighter as well, who we knocked out in that sort of knockout of the year fashion. Baranchik was a little bit less polished fundamentally and less crafty, of course, than the likes of Regis Prograis. So it will be a much different
yeah,
style of fight, but I do think it makes for a very interesting matchup. I slightly favor I slightly favor pro grade, but I do think it's pretty much a toss up 50-50 for the most part.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Of course, there's as I said, both guys are top level fighters and have their have their merits, and yeah,
And my
yeah.
dog is telling me to hurry up.
He's hungry, maybe.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's probably the big stuff, and we'll
Mm,
see what happens shortly thereafter as far as some of the other matchups coming up. Of course, we'll have our chats here next week. Of course, boxing Chit, number 34. If we're tracking
yeah,
correctly, that's what I have in the title there. It looks like it's number 34. So, boxing Chit 34.
34.
It's good. Certainly, we want to thank all of the people who joined in to share in the discussion. Shout out Random Acoustic Thoughts, Big Fish Vega, Fight Night Scores, Bruce Gas. Any others who are watching this here in the aftermath on replay, certainly appreciate it. Any closing thoughts there, Boz, Mr. Boxing Haven?
Well, this weekend was probably the weakest of this month,
Yeah,
unfortunately. Yes, but there is more good stuff to come. So yeah, I will really follow with anticipation and tune in next weekend and
good stuff.
next
Good stuff. So
right.
there it is, folks. Be sure to hit up Boz, follow him on YouTube, subscribe. He'll be tagged in the actual title, and then of course the Boxing Haven on Facebook. Discussions, discussions, discussions. So until next week, we will catch you all on the flip side. So enjoy the rest of your weekend.